I gave up everything to care for my mom for 5 years. My family's betrayal backfired spectacularly. Looking back, I should have seen the trap the moment my siblings started talking about fairness. But hey, I was 32, thought I had life figured out. Spoiler alert, I didn't. Let me paint you a picture of who I was before everything went sideways. David Thompson, that's me, not exactly living the American dream with a capital D, but I had my own lowercase version that fit just right. My apartment in Queens wasn't much. 700 square feet of pre-war charm, which is realtor speak for radiators that clang like ghost prisoners and a bathroom where you could wash your hands while sitting on the toilet. But it was mine. Well, would be mine in 18 more payments to Chase Bank. I worked as a graphic designer at a mid-sized marketing firm downtown. Nothing glamorous. Mostly redesigning logos for dental offices and creating Facebook ads for local restaurants. But after 6 years of grinding, they'd finally noticed I existed. Got a raise that meant I could order the good coffee at Starbucks without checking my bank balance first. Small victories, right? Then there was Anna. Met her at a friend's 4th of July barbecue 3 years back. She laughed at my terrible joke about hot dogs being sandwiches. That's when I knew she was special. We weren't that couple posting sunset photos from Santorini. We were more the Sunday morning bagels and Netflix type. Our big dream? 2 weeks in Italy. Not the Instagram Italy with perfectly staged cappuccinos. The real Italy where you get lost in narrow streets and eat too much pasta and nobody cares if your outfit matches. We had a jar on the kitchen counter labeled Carbs Fun, where we'd toss spare 20s. It was half full. I thought we had all the time in the world to fill it. My older brother Mark lived in a different universe. Investment banker at Goldman Sachs. The kind who said things like, leverage our synergies, without ironic air quotes. His apartment had a doorman who knew wine pairings. His suits cost more than my monthly rent. At family dinners, he'd talk about merger acquisitions while I'd try to explain why Comic Sans is a crime against humanity. We inhabited the same city, but different planets. Lisa, my sister, had married into her alternate reality. Her husband, Richard, was a partner at some law firm with too many names on the letterhead. They lived in Westchester in a house with a mudroom. I didn't even know what a mudroom was until she gave us the grand tour. Apparently, it's a room just for being muddy. Rich people are weird. Every Christmas, we'd gather at Mom's house in New Jersey, the same split level where we grew up. Mark would pull up in his BMW, Lisa in her Range Rover, and me in my 2012 Honda Civic with a check engine light that had been on since Obama's second term. We'd exchange presents. They'd give me expensive things I'd never use, like a smartwatch that counted my steps, as if I didn't know I wasn't walking enough. I'd give them gift cards, because what do you buy people who purchase mudrooms? Mom would make her famous apple pie, the one with a crumbled top that could solve world conflicts if properly deployed. She'd look at us around the table and smile that way mothers do when they're proud, but also slightly confused about how their kids ended up so different. Mark talked about IPOs, Lisa discussed her charity galas, and I'd show them a logo I designed for a taco truck. They were successful. I was happy. Turns out those aren't the same thing. Not even close. The diagnosis came on a Tuesday. Isn't it weird how life-changing moments happen on regular days? Not during dramatic thunderstorms or significant dates. Just a Tuesday in March when Mom called and said the doctor had a word for why she kept forgetting where she put her keys, why she called me Mark twice last week, why she got lost coming home from the grocery store she'd shopped at for 30 years. Alzheimer's. The word hung in the air like smoke from a fire you can't put out. Mark and Lisa arrived at Mom's house the next Saturday in convoy formation. Mark's Lexus gleamed like it was auditioning for a commercial. They'd come dressed for a business meeting. Mark in his weekend casual that still looked pressed. Lisa in what I can only describe as aggressive beige. They called it a family meeting. In my experience, nothing good ever came from family meetings. This one was no exception. We sat around Mom's kitchen table, the one with a wobble that Dad never fixed before he passed 10 years ago. The kitchen still smelled like cinnamon and coffee, like Mom had been baking that morning, trying to pretend everything was normal. Mark cleared his throat the way he probably did, before presentations to executives. He had a leather portfolio. Who brings a leather portfolio to their mother's kitchen? We need to discuss Mom's care going forward, he started, using his Goldman Sachs voice. Lisa nodded like she was in a board meeting. They talked about options with the emotional investment of choosing a cable package. Memory care facilities ran $15,000 a month. Home health aides were unreliable and costly. They threw around terms like fiduciary responsibility and asset protection, while Mom sat right there, dunking a cookie in her coffee like we were discussing the weather. Then Mark looked at me with that expression he'd perfected, somewhere between pity and calculation. David, you've always been closest to Mom. Your job is flexible. You work from home sometimes, right? I wanted to correct him. I work from home Fridays if I finish my projects, not exactly the same as being a full-time caregiver. But he kept rolling. If you took on Mom's care, Lisa and I would be willing to make it worth your while. Lisa leaned forward, her face arranged in what she probably thought was compassion, but looked more like constipation. We'd officially relinquish any future claims to the house. When the time comes, it would be yours entirely. That's what, Mark? For $100,000. For $50,000 at current market values. Mark corrected, because God forbid we be imprecise about the dollar value of our mother's life. It's more than fair compensation for your time, Lisa added, emphasizing fair like it was a legal term she could defend in court. Think about it, David. You'd never qualify for a mortgage on a house like this with your situation. My situation. She meant my credit score, bruised from student loans, and that time I thought I could start a freelance design business. She meant my salary, which wouldn't impress anyone at her country club. She meant my life, which didn't fit neatly into spreadsheets and portfolios. Mom used to tell us when we were kids, beware of people who keep telling you how fair they're being. Fair people don't need to advertise. I should have remembered that. Should have seen the trap in their generous offer, the prison bars hidden in their magnanimity. But I looked at Mom, already fading at the edges like an old photograph, and I couldn't imagine strangers taking care of her. I said yes. The first year wasn't terrible. Mom could still remember our names most days. Anna would come over for dinner, bringing lasagna or takeout from that Thai place Mom loved. We'd watch Jeopardy together, and Mom would still beat us at the history categories. I set up my computer in Dad's old office, told myself I could balance both worlds. I was an idiot. By year 2, Anna's visits had dwindled to once a week, then twice a month. She'd sit on the couch, scrolling through her phone while Mom asked her the same question about her job 12 times in an hour. I can't put my life on pause, Anna finally said one night, standing in the doorway with her things already packed. I'm 30. I want kids, a real home, a partner who's actually present. She wasn't wrong. I wasn't present. I was a ghost haunting 2 lives, failing at both. My freelance clients started dropping off. Hard to meet deadlines when your mother thinks it's 1987 and she needs to pick you up from school at 2 in the morning. Impossible to join video calls when she's crying in the next room because she can't remember where her husband is, can't understand that he's been gone a decade. Mark and Lisa's involvement consisted of monthly phone calls, always on speaker, always from their cars between important things. How's everything? Good? Good. Keep up the good work, buddy. Like I was their employee of the month. They sent flowers on Mom's birthday, gift cards for Christmas. They never stayed longer than an hour when they visited, which was barely enough time for their cologne and perfume to settle into furniture. Year 3, 4, 5, they blurred together like watercolors in rain. My days became medication schedules and doctor appointments, explaining to Mom 40 times why she couldn't drive to the store, changing sheets at 3 a.m., pureeing food because she forgot how to chew properly, installing locks on cabinets after she drank half a bottle of Pine Sol thinking it was juice. The house that once smelled like cinnamon now reeked of industrial disinfectant and a peculiar staleness that clings to sickness. I stopped recognizing myself in mirrors. The man looking back had hollow eyes, gray threading through hair that hadn't seen a real barber in months, wearing the same 3 shirts in rotation because laundry was just another task on an endless list. I'd aged 15 years and 5. Sometimes I'd find myself laughing at the TV, then realize it wasn't laughter, but something closer to hysteria. When was the last time something was genuinely funny? When did I last feel anything besides exhaustion, so deep it lived in my bones? There's a special kind of loneliness in caring for someone with Alzheimer's. You're never alone. They need constant supervision. But the person you're with isn't really there. You're grieving someone who's still breathing. You become furniture in your own life, something functional but invisible. The guy at the pharmacy knew my name, knew Mom's prescriptions by heart, but couldn't tell you a single thing about who I used to be. The night Mom died, it was quiet. No dramatic goodbye, no moment of clarity where she recognized me one last time. Just a soft sigh, like she was finally exhaling after holding her breath for 5 years. I sat beside her bed until the sun came up, not crying, not thinking, just existing in that strange space between relief and devastation. The funeral was small. Mark flew in from a conference in Chicago. Lisa complained about the traffic from Westchester. They stood at the graveside in their black designer clothes, looking appropriately somber for exactly the right amount of time. They hugged me with those quick, efficient embraces rich people give poor relatives. Then they left, probably relieved the messy business of Mom's decline was finally over. I stood in the empty house that night. My house now, supposedly, $450,000 worth of compensation for 5 years of my life. $90,000 a year, if you want to be crude about it, before taxes, no health insurance, no retirement contributions, no vacation days, no sick leave, no future with Anna, no career to return to, no friends who remembered I existed. I'd been 32 when this started. Now I was 37, and the face in the mirror belonged to someone pushing 50. But the house was mine. That's what I told myself as I walked through rooms still haunted by the echo of Mom's confusion, still scarred by the machinery of her care. The house was mine. I'd paid for it with something more valuable than money. I'd paid with the years when you're supposed to be building something, becoming someone. I'd paid with my youth, that irreplaceable currency you don't realize you're spending until the bill comes due. I stood in Mom's room, looking at her empty bed, and felt something I couldn't quite name. Not hope exactly, but maybe the possibility of hope. The house was mine. I could sell it, start over somewhere. I could stay, transform it into something new. I could burn it down and toast marshmallows in the ashes. For the first time in 5 years, I had choices. They felt foreign in my hands, like tools I'd forgotten how to use. Outside, the world kept spinning. People were living their regular lives, complaining about traffic and coffee prices and Netflix shows. I envied them their small problems. But I also knew something they didn't: how much a life actually costs when you're the one paying. The house was mine. I'd earned it in ways the paperwork would never show. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough to build something from the ashes of who I used to be. If only I'd known what was coming next. If only I'd understood that when vultures are done with the dying, they turn to the living. But that night, standing in my mother's house, my house, I actually believed the worst was over. I was wrong. I was wrong. Dead wrong. The vultures weren't done feeding. They were just getting started. 7 days. That's all the grieving time you get in America before the business of death takes over. 7 days after we put Mom in the ground, after the neighbors stopped bringing casseroles nobody would eat, after the sympathy cards quit showing up with their hallmark wisdom about angels and better places. 7 days. And then my siblings arrived like a corporate merger was about to happen. They pulled up at exactly 2 p.m. that Saturday. Synchronized, like they'd planned it over their calendars between yoga classes and golf games. 2 cars this time. Mark's black Mercedes joining the Lexus, Lisa's husband Richard driving their second Range Rover. The cavalry had arrived, and I was the Indian. I watched from the living room window as they got out, checking their phones, adjusting their sunglasses. Mark carried a leather portfolio that probably cost more than Mom's monthly medication. Lisa had a Starbucks cup in one hand and her phone in the other, typing while she walked. Richard looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, which made 2 of us. They didn't knock, just walked in using the spare key, filling Mom's quiet house with their importance. The smell of expensive cologne and that particular scent rich people have, like new cars and confidence, invaded the space that still held traces of Mom's lavender hand cream. We sat around the same kitchen table where they'd made their generous offer 5 years ago. The wobble was worse now. I'd meant to fix it, add it to the list of things I'd do when I had time. Funny how you never get that time back. Mark opened a portfolio with the same ceremony priests use with Bibles. Inside were documents, spreadsheets, sticky notes in colors I didn't know sticky notes came in. He cleared his throat, put on his Goldman Sachs face, the one that had probably foreclosed on 1,000 dreams without blinking. He started with that voice people use when they're about to screw you but want to feel good about it. You know the one. Part sympathy, part condescension, all business. The kind of voice that says, "This hurts me more than it hurts you," while reaching for your wallet. He'd talk about estate taxes, market valuations, something called stepped-up basis that sounded like a dance move but apparently meant money. Lisa nodded along, occasionally adding helpful observations about property appreciation in North Jersey, citing Zillow estimates like scripture. Richard stayed quiet, examining his manicure with the dedication of a scholar. Then Mark looked at me, and I saw in his eyes that moment when the cat stops playing with the mouse, when the joke ends, when the check comes due. He actually tried to look sad about it, which was like watching a shark attempt empathy. The words came out wrapped in corporate bubble wrap, padded with false concern. They'd found a realtor, someone Lisa knew from her book club, who specialized in situations like these. The house would go on the market next month. Conservative estimate was $1.5 million, split 3 ways. That was $500,000 each. Before taxes, of course, minus realtor fees, staging costs, and whatever else they could think of to shrink my third. My mouth went dry. The room tilted. I grabbed the edge of the table, felt that wobble mock me. The words came out before I could stop them, small and pathetic in the kitchen where I'd fed Mom 10,000 meals she couldn't remember eating. I reminded them about our agreement, the house for my time, the compensation for 5 years of my life. Mark actually looked confused for a second, like I'd started speaking Mandarin. Then his face rearranged itself into what he probably thought was sympathy, but looked more like constipation. Lisa laughed. Actually laughed. Not a cruel laugh, which would have been better. This was worse. The kind of laugh you'd give a child who thinks the tooth fairy is real. She tilted her head. Probably something she learned in whatever seminar taught rich people how to handle difficult conversations with poor relatives. She explained it to me slowly, using small words, like I was particularly stupid instead of just exhausted. That conversation 5 years ago, that was motivation, encouragement, family supporting family. She actually used air quotes around agreement, her manicured fingers making little rabbit ears in the air. Then she delivered the killing blow with a smile that would have made Judas proud. She said verbal agreements weren't worth the paper they weren't written on. Said it like it was clever, like she thought it herself, instead of stealing it from whatever legal drama Richard watched while she was at spin class. The truth hit me like a physical thing, like walking into a glass door you didn't see coming. They'd planned this. From the beginning. Every monthly phone call. Every, "How's it going, buddy?" Every flower arrangement on Mom's birthday. All of it was just maintaining the illusion until the paperwork was ready. Mark tried to soften it, because he still needed to feel like the good guy in his own story. He talked about how they'd been patient, how they'd given me time with Mom, how grateful they were for my sacrifice. Sacrifice! Like I'd volunteered for this. Like I'd raised my hand and said, "Yes, please, let me flush my 30s down the toilet while you build your portfolios." Richard finally spoke, probably because Lisa kicked him under the table. He mentioned something about adverse possession laws, how my living there didn't establish ownership, how tenant rights didn't apply to family situations. Every word was another nail in the coffin I'd apparently been building for myself. They left after an hour, having accomplished their mission. Lisa actually hugged me on the way out, that kind of hug you give someone at a funeral, when you don't really know them but feel obligated. She smelled like a Nordstrom perfume counter. She whispered that they'd be fair about the timeline, give me a chance to get my affairs in order. Affairs. Like I had affairs. Like I was anything more than a ghost haunting someone else's investment. 3 days later, reality arrived via FedEx. The courier looked bored, had me sign on his electronic pad, handed me an envelope that felt heavy with bad news. Official weight. Legal weight. The kind of envelope that changes everything and knows it. Inside was letterhead, so sharp it could cut glass. Evers and Thorne, attorneys at law. The paper was thick, expensive, the kind that makes a sound when you unfold it. Every word was precisely typed, justified margins, professional font. The kind of document that means business, that went to law school, that bills $300 an hour just to exist. Notice to quit and surrender premises. Even the title was hostile. 30 days to vacate. 30 days to pack up 5 years of my life, Mom's entire existence, decades of memories. 30 days before they'd involved a sheriff, though they hoped it wouldn't come to that. How thoughtful. At the bottom, like a P.S. from hell, was a note, handwritten by someone, probably a paralegal with better handwriting than mine would ever be. They were prepared to offer $10,000 for my inconvenience if I vacated without incident. $10,000. $2,000 per year. About $5.47 per day. Less than minimum wage for the hardest job I'd ever done. I sat on the floor of Mom's room, surrounded by boxes I'd started packing her things into. Boxes marked donate and keep and decide later. The $10,000 stared up at me from the letter. That's what 5 years of my life was worth to them. Less than they'd spend on a vacation. Less than Lisa's handbag collection. Less than the depreciation on Mark's Mercedes in a single year. The house felt different now. Not mine, never mine, just a place I'd been allowed to exist while I served my purpose. Every room held ghosts of the life I'd given up. The corner where I'd set up my computer before Mom needed round-the-clock care. The couch where Annie used to curl up before she realized I was choosing Mom over her every single day. The kitchen where I'd pureed 1,000 meals, washed 1,000,000 dishes, had conversations with someone who forgot my name but still, somehow knew she loved me. I started going through Mom's things properly, the way you do when you realize time isn't infinite. Her closet still smelled like her, that mixture of lavender and something medicinal, the scent of age and illness, and underneath it all, still Mom. Her jewelry box sat on the dresser, one of those old wooden ones with a dancer that spun when you opened it. The dancer had stopped spinning years ago, frozen mid-pirouette, which felt appropriate. Most of the jewelry was gone, sold piece by piece over the years to pay for prescriptions, special equipment, the 1,000 little expenses that insurance laughed at. But I opened it anyway, running my fingers through the empty velvet compartments, each one a small casket for something beautiful that used to live there. In the bottom drawer, underneath where her pearl necklace used to sit, the velvet was loose, lifted at the corner, like it had been worried by nervous fingers. I pulled at it, and it came up easily, revealing the plain wood beneath, and something else. A piece of paper, folded so many times it was barely bigger than a quarter, folded with purpose, with intent, hidden like a secret that mattered. The paper was thin, almost transparent, like tissue paper or insect wings. I unfolded it carefully, terrified it would disintegrate in my hands. Mom's handwriting, shaky but determined, the letters formed with effort, some words traced over twice like she was fighting to make them clear. The date at the top was from 2 years ago, during one of her better periods, what the doctors call moment of clarity, but what I call moments of Mom. My hands trembled as I read the first line. 5 words that changed everything. 5 words that made me realize Mom had been playing a different game all along, one my siblings didn't even know existed. The letter started, "My dear David, I know they will try to cheat you." I sat there on her bedroom floor, holding that piece of paper like it was made of gold and dynamite, feeling something I hadn't felt in so long I'd forgotten its name. Hope. It was hope. Tiny, fragile, possibly stupid hope, but hope nonetheless. Mom had known. Somehow, even with her mind coming apart at the seams, she'd known exactly what Mark and Lisa would do, and she'd done something about it. The woman who couldn't remember my name had remembered to protect me. The letter weighed nothing in my hand, but it felt like it could change everything. I held it against the light from the window, watched the afternoon sun turn the paper translucent. Mom's words floating there like a message from another world, which I guess they were. Whatever came next, whatever Mom had planned, I knew one thing for certain. The game wasn't over. My siblings thought they'd won, thought they'd played me perfectly. But Mom had been dealing cards they didn't even know were in the deck. I folded the letter carefully, put it in my shirt pocket where I could feel it against my chest like armor. Then I stood up in what they thought would be their house. And for the first time in 5 years, I smiled. Really smiled. Mom always said the best chess players think 10 moves ahead. Turns out she'd been thinking ahead even when she couldn't remember what year it was. Mom always said the best chess players think 10 moves ahead. Turns out she'd been thinking ahead even when she couldn't remember what year it was. I sat on her bedroom floor for an hour, reading and rereading that letter. Each word was a small miracle, written during one of those windows when the fog lifted and Mom was herself again. She must have fought so hard to stay clear long enough to write it. I could see it in the handwriting. Some words traced over twice, like she was battling her own brain for every letter. She wrote about hearing Mark and Lisa talking in the kitchen one Thanksgiving, back when she could still understand but couldn't always respond. They thought she was napping in her chair. They discussed their plan like she was already gone, dividing up her life between sweet potato casserole and pumpkin pie. Lisa had actually said the words, just until the inevitable, and Mark had laughed. Mom heard it all, and she remembered. Somehow, through all the confusion and loss, she held on to that betrayal like a lifeline. But Mom didn't just get mad. She got smart. Attached to the letter, with a rusted paperclip, was another document, official, notarized, the seal raised like braille beneath my fingers. Caregiver agreement and life estate deed. The date was from 4 years ago, a full year into her diagnosis. She'd gone to see Harrison, her old friend from church who happened to be one of the sharpest estate lawyers in Jersey. She'd gone alone, during one of her good days, told me she was going to the hairdresser. The contract was beautiful in its simplicity. In exchange for my caregiving services, estimated at market rate of $35 per hour, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, Mom had transferred the house to me while retaining a life estate. The math was all there, witnessed and notarized. 5 years of round-the-clock care at professional rates came to over $1.5 million. The house, valued at $450,000, was actually under compensation for my services. I called Harrison's office with shaking hands. His secretary put me through immediately, like she'd been expecting my call for years. Harrison's voice was warm bourbon and old leather, the kind of voice that had probably destroyed Fortune 500 companies over lunch. He told me to come by his office that afternoon, bring the documents, bring the eviction notice, bring my anger. That last part was his exact words. Bring your anger, he said. We're going to need it. Harrison's office was in one of those old buildings downtown where the elevator still had a brass gate and an operator who knew everyone's name. His was on the 7th floor, all dark wood and leather-bound books that weren't just for show. The man himself looked like Hollywood's idea of a lawyer. Silver hair, perfect suit, glasses that caught the light when he smiled, which he did, often, especially when looking at Mom's paperwork. He read through everything while I sat in a chair that probably cost more than my car. Every few seconds, he'd make a little sound, approval, amusement, something between a chuckle and a war cry. When he finished, he set the papers down with the reverence you'd give a winning lottery ticket or a signed Babe Ruth card. He told me Mom had come to him right after her diagnosis, clearer than she'd been in months. She knew what was coming. Not just a disease, but her children's response to it. She'd raised them, after all. She knew Mark's greed came wrapped in spreadsheets, and Lisa's cruelty came with a smile. So she'd asked Harrison to build her a trap. Not just any trap, a perfect one. The caregiver agreement was ironclad. The life estate deed was already recorded at the county clerk's office. Had been for years. My siblings could fight it, sure, but they'd lose. More importantly, they'd lose publicly. Harrison had a whole file of documentation. Mom's medical records showing her competency at the time of signing, contemporaneous notes from her doctor confirming her capacity, even a video of her explaining her decision, looking directly at the camera and saying she wanted to protect the child who'd actually love her when loving her became hard. But here's where it got beautiful. Harrison suggested we let them think they'd won, let them list the house, find a buyer, all the way to closing. Let them taste that money. Because the sweeter the dream, the more bitter the waking. I pretended to break. Called Mark, let my voice crack just right. Said I couldn't fight anymore. I'd take their $10,000 and go quietly. He actually laughed. Not mean, but relieved, like when you finally get a crying baby to sleep. He said I was making the right choice, being realistic that this was best for everyone. I agreed with him while Harrison sat across from me, smile sharp as a sunrise. They listed the house 3 days later. The realtor signs went up like victory flags. Coming soon turned to for sale, turned to under contract in less than 2 weeks. The market was hot and Mom's house was perfect. That classic suburban dream with good bones and better memories. At least for anyone who hadn't spent 5 years watching someone disappear inside it. Mark sent me updates like he was doing me a favor. The buyers offered $1.5 million, cash, quick closing. Some tech couple from the city looking for more space, good schools, the whole suburban package. He forwarded me emails from the realtor. CC'd me on discussions about closing dates, included me like I was still family instead of just an inconvenience they were about to pay off. Then came the photo that changed everything. A text from Lisa, sent to our family group chat that I'd forgotten to leave. Her and Mark at SDK Steakhouse in Manhattan, celebrating the sale. The picture was perfectly staged, them toasting with champagne that cost more per bottle than most people make in a day. Mark's steak was obscene, one of those wagyu things that looks like meat-flavored butter. Lisa's smile was the worst part, all teeth in triumph, like a shark that just realized the cage is unlocked. The caption read, "Celebrating smart investments and family decisions. Sometimes the hardest choices are the most profitable. Blessed." Blessed. She actually wrote blessed. That's when my sadness crystallized into something harder. Not anger exactly. Anger burns hot and fast. This was colder, more patient. This was resolve. They weren't just taking Mom's house. They were celebrating my pain. They were toasting the 5 years of my life like it was a business expense they'd successfully minimized. The closing was scheduled for following Thursday, 2 p.m. at Harrison's office. He insisted on hosting, said his conference room had better light. Mark and Lisa didn't question it. Why would they? They'd won. I spent that week packing, but not the way they thought. I packed memories, Mom's recipe box, her favorite blanket, the photo albums from before everything went wrong, the things that mattered. The house itself? That was just walls and a roof. What mattered was what happened inside it, and that was already mine. Thursday came bright and cold, one of those perfect October days when the air is so clear it hurts. I put on my only suit, the one I bought for job interviews that stopped happening 5 years ago. It still fit barely. I looked in the mirror and saw someone I hadn't seen in years. Not the caregiver, not the ghost, but David. Still tired, still hurt, but David nonetheless. Harrison's conference room was all glass and consequence. The buyers were already there. A nice couple, younger than me, probably making their fortune in tech or finance or something else I didn't understand. Their agent looked expensive. Mark and Lisa's lawyer looked more expensive. My siblings looked the most expensive of all, dressed for their victory lap. Mark shook my hand like we were colleagues, not brothers. Lisa air-kissed my cheek, left behind a cloud of perfume that probably cost more than Mom's monthly medications. They took their seats at the far end of the table, the power position, backs to the window, so the light would be in everyone else's eyes. Their lawyer, a thin man who looked like he subsisted entirely on kale and billable hours, spread out the papers like a dealer at a casino. Purchase agreement, transfer docs, title insurance, all the paperwork needed to turn a home into money. He had a special pen, because of course he did, one of those Mont Blanc things that signs away dreams in style. He pushed the stack toward me with practiced precision, pointed to each signature line with his expensive pen. His voice was smooth as oil practice, the voice of someone who'd done this dance 1,000 times. Just sign here, initial here, date here. Simple as that. End of an era, beginning of a check. I picked up the pen, felt its weight. More than an ounce, less than a pound. Exactly the weight of temptation. Everyone was watching. The buyers looked sympathetic. The agents looked impatient. Mark and Lisa looked satisfied. I set the pen down. The silence was perfect. You could hear the air conditioning. Someone typing in the next office. The city existing outside the window. Harrison chose that moment to stand. He moved like a man who had all the time in the world and most of the money, too. He reached into his briefcase, leather, worn, the kind of bag that had seen more battles in general, and pulled out a single folder. When he spoke, his voice was gentle as a funeral, sharp as a verdict. He explained about the caregiver agreement, the life estate deed, the fact that the house had been mine for years, legally, completely, unquestionably. He laid out each document like evidence at a trial, which I suppose it was. The buyer's agent went pale. The buyers themselves looked confused and angry, but not at me, at Mark and Lisa, who promised him a clean sale, no complications, easy closing. Their lawyer grabbed the documents, read them with increasing speed, his face cycling through the stages of grief in real time. But Harrison wasn't done. Oh no, he pulled out another document, this one newer, crisp as fresh money. He explained that while his client, that was me, was perfectly willing to proceed with the sale, the check would need to be made out to the legal owner, David Thompson, the full $1.5 million. The room exploded, not literally, though that would have been less destructive. Mark stood so fast his chair fell backward, started yelling about fraud, about elder abuse, about undue influence. Lisa was quieter but deadlier, hissing threats about lawsuits, about investigations, about how she knew people who knew people. Their lawyer was the only one who stayed silent. He'd gone past pale to gray, the color of someone watching their reputation dissolve. He kept reading the documents, looking for a loophole, a mistake, anything. But Mom and Harrison had been thorough. Every I dotted, every T crossed, every single detail perfect as a symphony. Finally, the lawyer spoke. 3 words that changed everything. It's all legal. Harrison smiled then, really smiled, the kind of smile that probably scared judges. But he still wasn't done. The grand finale was coming. He pulled out one more document, placed it gently on the table like a bomb he was done carrying. He explained that his client had suffered significant damages. 5 years of professional caregiving services, unpaid at market rate. The standard rate for round-the-clock Alzheimer's care in New Jersey, $35 per hour, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. The math was simple. The number was not. $450,000. Plus legal fees, of course. Plus emotional distress. Plus credit damage from 5 years without income. The full claim came to over $500,000. He'd file it tomorrow morning, unless Mark and Lisa wanted to settle today. Sign away any claim to the estate. Acknowledge the validity of the caregiver agreement and walk away clean. Or fight it in court, publicly, with all their friends from the country club watching. Lisa broke first. Started crying, but not sad tears. Angry ones, the kind that come when someone used to winning finally loses. She accused me of planning this, of manipulating Mom, of being a con artist in a cheap suit. Mark was worse. He threatened everything. Legal action, physical violence, social destruction. He'd make sure I never worked again, never had credit again, never had a life again. Harrison just waited. Let them exhaust themselves like toddlers having a tantrum. When they finally ran out of threats, he asked them quietly if they'd like to call their own lawyers, get second opinions. He had all day. The buyers, meanwhile, were already on their phones with their agent, probably looking for another house, one without all this drama. It took 3 hours. 3 hours of phone calls, hushed conferences in the hallway, threats that got quieter and weaker each time. In the end, their lawyer advised them to take the deal, sign away their claims, avoid the lawsuit, walk away with their reputations, intact if not their wallets. They signed. Each signature looked like it physically hurt them, like the pen weighed 1,000 pounds. Lisa's mascara was running. Mark's face was the color of expensive wine, the kind that stains. When they finished, they left without a word. No goodbye, no see you at Christmas, nothing. Just gone, like they'd never been family at all. The buyer still wanted the house. Harrison negotiated on my behalf. Same price. But they'd cover all closing costs, all fees, everything. They just wanted it done, wanted to move on, wanted to forget this glimpse into family dysfunction. The check was cut that afternoon. $1.5 million, made out to David Thompson. I walked out of that office building into the October sun, holding a check worth more money than I'd ever imagined having. But the check wasn't a victory. The victory was smaller, folded in my pocket. Mom's letter. Her last move in a game she played perfectly even while her mind came apart. I didn't go back to the house that night. Went to a hotel instead. A nice one. The kind with a doorman and room service and towels so soft they felt like clouds. I ordered dinner to my room, ate steak for the first time in 5 years, drank wine that didn't come from a box. And I cried. Not sad tears, not happy ones, just tears. 5 years worth, all at once. The next morning, I knew what to do. The money wasn't really mine, it was Mom's. She'd earned it by seeing the future, even when she couldn't remember the present. So I'd use it the way she would have wanted. Not for revenge, not for showing off, but for something better. The Martha Thompson Foundation for Caregivers. That's what I called it. Support for people caring for parents with dementia. Respite care, financial assistance, counseling, legal aid. All the help I wished I'd had. All the support that might have saved not just me, but Anna, my career, my sense of self. The foundation's office is in Mom's house. I kept it, renovated it, turned it into something beautiful and useful. Support groups meet in the living room where Mom used to watch Jeopardy. The kitchen where I pureed all those meals now hosts cooking classes for caregivers. Mom's bedroom is an office where social workers help families navigate the maze of Alzheimer's care. Mark and Lisa never contacted me again. I heard through mutual friends that they told people Mom had always planned to leave me everything, that they'd graciously stepped aside, that they were proud of the foundation. Historical revision at its finest. I let them have their story. The truth was mine to know. Last week, a woman came to the foundation, 60 years old, caring for her mother, looking exactly like I used to, exhausted, desperate, invisible. She cried when we told her about our respite care program, cried harder when she learned it was free. She asked why anyone would do this, create this place, give this help. I told her about Mom, about how she protected me even when she couldn't remember my name, about how love isn't always pretty or easy or Instagram worthy, but it's always worth protecting, about how the best revenge isn't destroying those who hurt you, it's building something beautiful from the ashes they left behind. The woman smiled through her tears and said something that would have made Mom proud. Your mother's still taking care of people, isn't she? Yeah, she is. In every caregiver we help, every family we support, every person who doesn't have to go through what I did alone. Mom's still here, still fighting, still thinking 10 moves ahead. That's her real house. Not the building, not the money, not even a foundation with her name on it. Her real house is built from every person who learns that caring for someone doesn't mean disappearing. That love doesn't require martyrdom. That even when your mind goes, your heart can still win the game. Checkmate, Mom. You beautiful, brilliant, unforgettable soul. Checkmate.